Over the past month, we've met some of the local candidates that are running for the offices that represent our area. This week, we'll meet the candidates for Vanderburgh County Council District 1. We'll also hear from the local party leaders on the races that they're watching as we approach Election Day 2022. That's next on WNIN Newsmakers. Our first guest has held the office of Vanderburgh County Councilman from District 1 since 1991. James Raymond, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
So first of all, just tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, okay. I'm a lifelong Evansville, West Side, Vanderburgh County resident. I come from a very large family of 13 kids. We've lived in this community forever. I mean, basically, all of my siblings that are alive still live here today, and most of my nieces and nephews. I mentioned I had an extremely large family. I've got like 125 nieces and nephews, including great nieces and nephews. So, we're very grounded here. We feel like we are a part of this community and just love it. We love being here.
Great. Well, help our viewers understand some of the duties of a county council person, and then what do you feel like you bring to the table to help perform those duties? Okay.
Well, the Vanderburgh County Council, we are the fiscal body of county government. So we hold the checkbook. We work closely with all the county departments. We work extremely close with the county commissioners. They're the legislative body. And a lot of their requests, or all of their requests, in some form or fashion comes through the Vanderburgh County Council for funding. I have been the finance chairman for the last 25 out of 26 years, I think. Prior to that, I served as president 2 years, and vice president would make up the balance of that. So I've always served as an officer on Vanderburgh County.
Okay.
Since I've been on. So, and a lot of that is by virtue of I've developed confidence with the other 6 members. We're a 7-member body. So, they appoint me have appointed me each and every year for, as an example, 25 years of being finance chairman. So, you get that through earning their support and knowing that you're going to work your fanny off to do what needs to be done and what's best for the county council, and particularly what's best for the citizens of Vanderburgh County.
Wonderful. Well, if you are reelected, do you have 2 or 3 priorities that you'd really like to focus on, and how do you feel like you would go about tackling those?
Well, we've got a lot of priorities going right now. We're on the beginning of a new addition to the Vanderburgh County Jail, which is approximately an additional 125 housing beds. We're developing a mental health wing. Along with that, we're moving the county coroner's office from downtown in an old residential type building into the type of building they need, with all the up-to-date refrigeration units and air handling units and everything that you need to efficiently and appropriately run a county coroner's office. And then with that, we're getting ready to open. It's not completed, but we're getting ready to open what was a $4.5 million addition to the Vanderburgh County courts. So, that all sounds like they're 4 different projects, but they're really one. Okay. Because we're able to only build an additional 125 beds because we went through the effort and the expense of expanding our courtroom space. So now we can process the inmates through the court system much quicker than we've been able to. We're almost doubling the size of our court space. So with that, that'll control or help control the overcrowding that we've seen in the past. So, again, we're in the middle of all those projects, but there's a lot of other things. We made an extremely heavy commitment this year to fix all the bad roads in Vanderburgh County. We made a $7 million commitment that we probably have completed 40 or 50% of that this year, but that commitment is scheduled to finish in 2023.
So is there anything else that you would like our voters and our viewers to know about you before they head to the polls?
Not really, other than, again, I've raised a family here. My wife is a lifelong West Sider. She's a Wrights girl. I'm a modern day guy. In fact, not to bore you with too much family things, but since like in the mid-50s, there's only been 1 year at Modern Day High School that there's not been a Raven in attendance there. So we've got a stronghold on the West Side for sure. But the other exciting project that I did not mention is there is a massive effort to restore the old Coliseum, the old Veterans Memorial Coliseum. And so we are just in the beginning phases of that. I've been part of like 2 or 3 meetings in the last 3 or 4 weeks. We've got a bunch scheduled. We're looking at finance options. We're looking at funding options. We're looking at a lot of things to turn that old building, that beautiful historic building, into something that'll drive entertainment venues to Vanderburgh County, lots of tourism, something that our veterans they'll fall in love with. I mean, they already love that old building, but we're going to make it special. We're going to give it hundreds more years of life, hopefully very soon, and we're making those decisions right now.
Okay. Well, Mr. Rayburn, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you.
The Democratic challenger for Vanderburgh County District 1 joins us now. Karen Rising, thanks for being here. Thanks. So first, just tell our viewers a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. Well, I grew up here in Evansville. I did my undergrad at IU and then did my master's degree at Georgetown University. And from there, I got a job with a consulting firm to help multinationals like GE Power Systems and AT&T develop new markets in the Middle East, because that was my subject matter specialty. So I did that for about 12 years, and then AT&T hired me to help them grow their market in the Middle East region. So I lived over there and worked off and on for about 6 years. Came back to DC, and in 2006, with my children, I decided it was time to move back home so that they could experience the same great environment growing up that I did. So I did that and brought the job with me for a short while, but then, surprise of my life, I got remarried to a tried and true West Sider, and we've lived over on the West Side for 14 years now. And I've been very involved in civic and community and educational efforts. I started a global studies program at Memorial and taught there for 5 years, global studies and Middle East history and language, Arabic language. And so yeah, a lot of community activity, PTA president, board president of Evansville Ballet Theater, Big Brothers, Big Sisters. So, there's a lot that one can contribute to here in Evansville.
Okay. Well, what are can you help us understand some of the duties of being a Vanderburgh County Councilor? And then what do you feel like you bring to the table, the qualifications you bring to the table to become elected?
Sure. So the county government sort of mirrors the federal government, which I had many years of dealing with. So the commission is like the presidency and the cabinet. They propose projects and policies, but the council is like Congress. It has the power of the purse. So all the budgetary and fiscal taxing responsibilities for the county lie within the council. And so it's very important, and there are a lot of priorities that need to be addressed that haven't been for quite a long time. One of them that jumps to mind that has been of concern to a lot of people is the challenge that we have in mental health and substance abuse. This is decades long, and it certainly overlaps into the tandem issue that we have in terms of our jail and our incarceration issues, which have jumped, have doubled in the last 10 years, but our population has barely risen. I saw a study that the County Sheriff's Office commissioned in 2019 from USI that says that almost 80% of our inmates have either a mental and or substance abuse problem. So I support the Democratic candidate for sheriff, Noah Robinson, in his approach to this issue, which is not only to get the proper resources to house humanely and safely those who are incarcerated, because they have to be held accountable, but also to try to address the underlying causes for this. Because my business background tells me that we have to do more to become more competitive. Here, my background is in telecommunications, and I've worked in a lot of different places in the country and overseas, and so I'm very used to innovation and how technology can be adapted to spur productivity. So I'd like to bring some of that background and best practices to the County Council. I think there's a lack of good best practices there now, and it results in inefficiency and a lot of deferred action on things that that everybody knows for decades have been issues and just don't get addressed.
Well, you mentioned priorities, and it sounds like maybe mental health and the challenges at the jail are one of those priorities. Do you have any other top priorities that you are bringing to this race, and how do you feel like you would go about implementing them?
So one of my top priorities is broadband, which we have started to address through the American Rescue Plan funding of the Rural Broadband Project. But that's a one-shot federal grant. I'm delighted to see it because, again, given my experience, I can tell you we're 25 years behind a lot of other places in the country in terms of broadband penetration. So I would make that a top priority that we address broadband which is as critical infrastructure as roads and sewers, in my mind, if we're going to be economically competitive. The other issue is affordable quality childcare. When I came back, and I see you nodding, when I came back as a single parent in 2006, I was shocked that we had so little licensed quality childcare. And I know it remains a critical issue that both harms our families' ability to have the quality of the standard of living from two-income wage earners, as well as our workforce. We need a robust, strong workforce, and everybody who wants to work should be able to work. So one idea that I have, that I hope to pursue when I'm elected, is we have TIF zones, this tax incremental financing zones, and there are 3 of them in my district, and they don't seem to be producing much revenue. I'd like to see us focus on childcare facilities and induce those kinds of operations to establish in those those tax financial enhanced areas, to see if we couldn't address that community need that will ultimately help our workforce and bring in investment, which will bring in the type of investment which will bring in good paying jobs. We have a lot of low paying jobs here, but we don't have nearly enough good paying jobs.
So in the rest of our time, anything else that you would like our viewers to know about you before they go to the polls?
So I do have a website and a Facebook page, and I encourage people to take a look at that. My underlying reason in running is that I think, given the times that we live in, where too many Americans are losing faith and trust in our government, I think accountability and transparency are essential. I have not seen that on the council under the leadership of my opponent, and I would change that. I would hold quarterly meetings in my district to let people know what the council's doing and get their feedback. I think that's the best way to reassure people that government in a democracy is working for the voters.
All right. Well, Karen Rising, thank you so much for your information. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Here to talk about some of the other races in Vanderburgh County is Ashley Davis from the Vanderburgh County Republicans. Nice to meet you, and thanks for being here.
Hi, Amy. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, first let's talk about some of the state house races. In 76, Representative Wendy McNamara, she's facing a Democratic challenger and a Libertarian candidate. What are the thoughts about that race?
Yeah, so Wendy has two challengers, which is very interesting. That's not typical for her race necessarily. And it's also exciting. I think it's kind of brought some momentum to the party here locally. People have really gotten out to help her door knock and get involved. It's just one of those things where we redistricted recently, and as a part of that redistricting, I think some people were included that maybe weren't previously, and it's changed the makeup of that district a little bit.
So in 77, Republicans didn't put anybody up against Representative Hatfield. Any insight?
Definitely. Ryan is a ubiquitous figure around town, and he is very good for Republicans to work with. I have to say, we would obviously want a Republican in there, but if you got to have a Democrat, Ryan Hatfield's a pretty good one to have. Additionally, that is a very hard district. If you look at how it's made up, it is very much the urban core of Evansville. And so that urban area is, it tends to be a little bit more Democrat leaning.
Let's talk 78. Representative O'Brien facing a Democratic challenger, of course. How are you feeling about that race?
Yeah, so I think Tim O'Brien, we're feeling pretty good about that one. He's running against Jason Sahlstrom, and that district kind of cuts the northern part of Vanderburgh County and then sort of the eastern part over into Newburgh. We've held that seat for quite a while. Holly Sullivan had it before Tim O'Brien. It is interesting because Tim is actually, it's his first time running for that seat. So he was appointed in, and this is his first go at it. So I think he's been working pretty hard, but we're feeling pretty good about that one.
All right. Okay, let's get a little more local. One of the big, really high-profile races, of course, prosecutor. We have Diana Moores and John Schaefer. So what are you feeling about that race?
Yeah, so we've all kind of coalesced behind Diana. She obviously had a very contested primary against Nick Herman, who's the current outgoing county prosecutor. She has an excellent background, and she has been working really hard to, I think, get out there locally and meet with different groups and constituents and interest groups and just saying, what do you all want to see from the prosecutor's office? How have we been running things previously, and how would you like to see them over the next 4 years? And certainly, I think Schaefer has been doing the same, with his party. But we are fairly confident in that race. I think that Diana brings a certain skill set to the office that we haven't had in prior years.
All righty. Longtime assessor Bill Flutie. He's now being challenged by Democrat Matthew Smith. How are you feeling about our long-term incumbents that have been in these offices?
Yes, so as far as the assessor and the auditor, Brian Girth, both of them are the incumbents. And, I think in those particular races, those kinds of races where the job is very specific, what a voter is looking for, what you and I and any citizen is looking for, is somebody who's going to execute that job well and do it efficiently and be a good steward of taxpayer dollars. And, we haven't seen much flack against them. I think they have a very good reputation. And so we're counting on that reputation and those voters to continue to support them.
All righty. County Commissioner, too new to the race. Justin Elpers on the Republican side, of course, and then Ryan Stratman on the Democratic side. Any thoughts around the County Commissioner race?
Yeah, definitely. So Jeff Hatfield is retiring, stepping back from his position, and that's sad but also exciting for voters because they're getting to look at two new candidates. So Justin has city council experience, and that's something his opponent doesn't. He's worked with the city budgets, which translates almost equally to the county, and he has that experience as a prior teacher. He's in the community, his kids are in the community, and I think that level of accessibility is something that people really like about him. So that's kind of what we're hearing is people really like how available Justin makes himself to voters and to constituents in his current role. So we're hoping to see him make it through.
So let's talk a little bit about your closing thoughts. Elections coming up next week. How are you feeling about voter turnout, those types of things?
Yeah, so I actually was just looking at the numbers before I came here, and right now, as of this morning, we have a little over 13,000 votes cast here in Vanderburgh County between absentee ballots and early vote. So that's a little bit down from 2018, and we had around at the end about 30,000 votes cast, I think somewhere in there, 30 to 40. In 2018, we're probably not going to get quite to that number, so that's interesting that the turnout is a bit lower this year, but we don't have as big of a race in terms of, we had Joe Donnelly and Mike Braun, and they were really duking it. There's a lot of money in that race. We're not quite seeing that this year. But we also, what we have seen kind of in terms of trends, most of the voters thus far are over the age of 65. Over the age of 50 is almost 90% of the votes when I ran it yesterday. Slightly more female than male. I think that's a little bit typical. Even in total turnout, it's usually a little bit more, females turn out a little bit better than men. But women under 40, which is a particular data point of interest for both Republicans and Democrats, we're currently seeing that it's much lower than we thought. We're not seeing them coming out in droves to the election polls, and so I think everything right now is trending in the direction that we like to see it. But certainly, we would encourage everybody to get out and vote and visit their poll centers either this weekend or come to the polls on Tuesday.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your information, Ashley. Good to meet you.
Thank you.
Well, to help us further understand the Vanderburgh County races from another point of view, Cheryl Schultz, the chair of the Vanderburgh County Democrats, now joins us. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the state house races. In 76, Catherine Ryback is challenging Representative Wendy McNamara, and there is also an independent in the race. So let's talk a little bit about that. Where do you think that race is going?
I think it's become interesting throwing the third candidate into that race. 76 has been held by McNamara for quite a while. That area covers all of Posey County and the western part of Vanderburgh County. So it's a divided, you're split between two counties. When the third candidate entered the race, I think it could help Catherine because I think she and Wendy might split the vote. Cheryl Badiger Smith is a strong Republican running as an independent who doesn't feel that Wendy is pro-life enough. And so I think that has an opportunity for Catherine to make a little bit of inroad into the other county.
All right. Well, in 77, the Republicans didn't put anyone up against Representative Hatfield, but there is a Libertarian challenger. So where do you feel like that race is going?
Well, I think Ryan is obviously going to win the race. Ryan is an excellent representative for our area. He's working very hard in the state legislature and has advanced to a very high position in the state legislature, and we definitely need to keep him in that position. I applaud the young woman for jumping into the race. We need young people running, and we need people interested in running, so I applaud her efforts.
Any surprises that there is not a Republican challenger in that race?
No.
All right. In 78, Jason Sahlstrom faces Representative O'Brien, who was appointed to that position to the House to replace Holly Sullivan. So what are your thoughts about that race?
I think it's an interesting race. Jason Sahlstrom came to us through an interesting program that the State Democratic Party did this year. It was called Contest Every Race. If we had an open race where we needed a candidate, we could contact the state party and they send out a text message to everybody in that particular area who they thought might be interested. And we had to have a meeting. We hosted a meeting. I had 14 people show up, and Jason Sahlstrom was one of those individuals. He has a huge interest in Indiana's business economy and how low we fall into the category. We're at the bottom of everything. Jason wants that to improve, and he's got a strong background in business, and that is his emphasis in that area.
Okay. So let's get a little more local.
Okay.
Big race is the sheriff's race.
Yes, I'm feeling very optimistic. I think Noah Robinson is extremely well qualified to serve as sheriff after being in the department for 23 years. I think having someone come from within the department to run the department is a huge advantage. He's been endorsed by a lot of people across the aisle as well as in the Democratic Party, and I think he's just proven that he is a very capable candidate and has the best interests of all the citizens of Vanderburgh County at heart.
Well, another pretty high-profile race, the prosecutor race.
Yes.
We've got Diana Moores and opponent John Schaefer. So, and have had lots of discussion around that. Where do you see that race going?
Well, I'm not sure where it's going. I think it's very close. I think that John Schaefer brings 13 years of experience of working in our local Vanderburgh County court system. Diana Moores moved here from Indianapolis just to run in this race. She now is currently working for Todd Rokita. I think the experience that he brings, and from living in the community, knowing the judges, knowing how the court system works, and the things that he wants to bring into that office, the diversion programs that he wants to implement, doing testing within the office instead of outsourcing, I think are those very good ideas, and I think John would be an excellent, excellent prosecutor.
All righty. Well, we've got a long-time assessor, Bill Flutie, who now has the challenger in Democrat Matthew Smith. What do you think about that race in terms of challenging such a long-time incumbent?
I think that because we have long-time incumbents, a lot of people think it's time for change. Matt is a younger individual who stepped up and decided, I want to run. This was an area he felt competent in. He's taken the test for the assessor's position and passed them. He said, you've got to start somewhere, and you might not win the first time, but you've got a next 4 years you could run again, whatever, just build some name recognition. So again, I applaud his efforts for getting out and wanting to run for something.
Auditor Eric Hurt versus Republican Brian Girth. Any thoughts around that race?
Eric hasn't really done too much to campaign in the traditional aspect of campaigning. He's trying to work with younger people and get his message out and getting more people engaged in voting, bringing out younger people to the polls. So we'll see how that works for him.
All righty. County commissioners, two new to the office.
Ryan Stratman is highly qualified to be a county commissioner. He has a finance background, so he's familiar with looking at budgets and running, companies that have budgets and how finance works. He has worked hard. He's knocked a lot of doors, made a lot of phone calls. Not sure how the race will go. Name recognition goes a long way, I realize, in races, so you're always up against somebody that has a high-profile name, but he's given it a good shot, and I think that he's got a good opportunity here.
All right, county council seats, 4 of those up this year, but really only District 1 has got the challenger. We heard from James Rabin and Karen Rising earlier.
I feel Karen Rising is one of the most competent women to step forward to run for office in quite a while. Her background is extensive, serving as a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. to working overseas. Again, a very good grasp of finance and what would be best for the county. She's lived here her whole life, been a West Sider, has a huge interest in what happens, and a deep interest in how our money is spent and what it's used for the betterment of our citizens. And again, running against someone who's been in an office for a long time, there's time for change. It's just time for change.
All right. And as the elections approach, what are your thoughts on this? What are you kind of already seeing in this space, and any message to our voters and our viewers out there?
I'm surprised that we haven't had a larger turnout. I thought that we have a lot of candidates. We're running 33 candidates as opposed to 11 this last cycle, which I thought would generate a little bit more interest in these races. We're running people in places we've not run before, township advisory board positions. We just haven't contended, and now we are this time. When we look at early voting, we started early in November. You could vote at the old National Events Plaza every day from 8 until 4. Starting last Monday, you could start voting at the libraries, and you can vote Monday through Saturday, and this is the 8th day of early voting, and we're just not seeing the numbers that we had seen in previous elections. So I'm not sure if it's apathy, disinterest, or what it is, but I would encourage everyone to please get out and exercise your right to vote.
All right, all right. Well, Sheriff Schultz, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Thanks again to all the candidates for Vanderburgh County Council District 1 for joining us, and also our representatives from both parties for informing us about our local elections. Next week, we'll be taking a look at the rising cases of RSV and how that's playing out in our local area. Thanks for watching WNIN Newsmakers.